Hello, I'm just going to try today. Sorry, it's a bit of a holiday week here, so we're not going to do as much as normal. But I'm going to try today to test some of the new 307 packages for MvvmCross, so the newest packages, which I'm going to push to NuGet today, I hope. And we're going to try and build up some dialogue solutions. So we don't have a Windows Phone or a WinRT.Dialog at the moment, although we did have some people playing with them, so they may happen at some point. But we're going to start with just trying to build up a Droid and a touch solution using Dialog. So let's dive in, and what we're going to do is create a new project, and it's going to go in N+1, of course. And we're going to start with our core, so portable class library, and this is going to be N, I think we're on 23, I might have to change that later if not. And this is going to be DLG.core, and it's going to be in a solution called DLG. So we'll give this a go and see what happens. Normal profiles, hit OK, off it goes and builds it, and then when it creates it we'll delete the file. Class 1, nobody wants that, and then I'll install the 307. So we're going to go to local because I haven't uploaded these yet to NuGet core. And so this should be 307 as you can see. And I'm going to install it. That seems to install okay. I don't think I need anything else in the core at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change my ViewModel. And let's change it so that we're going to have a string and a second string. So that'll be called hello2. And then let's also add a date time. So that needs to be brought in, and we'll set that initially to the current date, datetime dot today. So that's our view model done. And let's just tidy up the initialization strings a little. So we've got a hello, hello2, and the date. That should build. And we should now be able to go to the Solution Explorer, and let's add the Android UI for this. So we're going to add an Android application. This is going to be called, oh my god, I called it N+1 What does that mean? So that means it's named as N. Well, let's see if it works. We never know. So I'm going to add a new project, and we'll do that. Android N+1 I've never used hyphens in project names before. Let me use underscores just because it feels safer. And so this is going to be .droid. So that's added the UI for our droid. We don't care about updating those two things. Delete activity 1, we don't need that. Add a reference to our core. It's in solution. Add the NuGet packages. So for that what we're going to do is we're going to add a NuGet package again from local, which is MvvmCross. And then there's also this NuGet package here, which is the Droid.Dialog support, so I'm going to install that. And now we've done that, what we need to do is we do need to do a little bit of manual. So basically at the moment it's an, let me just check it builds before I do anything else. Okay, so there's a small problem there in the setup, which I'll need to change in my template, so that will be solved hopefully by the time it gets to you. Okay, so that builds. So what I'd now like to do is I'd like to change it from one of these kind of static views. In fact, we can even run it. Let me just show you. So if I take a look at the resources quickly and I go to my first view, and at the moment it's got an hello And I could add a hello 2 as well. Hello 2. And I could also add a text view for the date. So let's just do that. So if we were to run this up in the emulator, and hopefully that will build, run, package. It's almost there. So that now runs up in the emulator, and hopefully you can see that we've got our hello, we've got our MvvmCross, and you know this is all data bound exactly as you expect, and we've got the date as well. So that's all okay. Let's stop that. But what I'd like to do is, instead of having this XAML based or AXML based UI, I'd like to have a dialog based one. So what I'm going to do is, first view, I'm going to replace it, and instead of having an MVX activity, I'm going to have an MvvmCross activity. And that means that instead of setting the content view here, what I'd like to do is I would like to set up the dialog. So to do that, I do root equals, and that's a new root element, and I'll give it a name of the dialog. And inside the dialog, I'd like to put a section. So I put a new section element. And if you're not familiar with this at all, then you need to go and look at kind of Miguel's blog about how to do Miguel's project about how to do dialogs. But for now, hopefully you'll be all right. So this is going to be the string section, and in the string section I'm going to put a new, let's just put a new, let's make them both entry elements. So there's going to be an entry element which is for hello, and this entry element I'm going to bind. Hopefully it'll work that out. I'm going to bind to this, comma, and then I'll put in the binding text. So hopefully it's found that thing. And the binding text here is going to be value, because that's what an entry element has as its property. And I'm going to bind the value of the entry element to hello. And then I'll add another entry element underneath. Let's do that. And this is going to be for hello 2. And then beneath that, I'd like to put another section. And so this section is new. Section dates, and what I'll do in this is a new, and I think this is a date element, and so this is going to be the date, and I'm going to bind the value of that to the date in the view model. So hopefully value the date, and let me just, to prove it is actually working, let me underneath it put a new, okay, so there's a problem there with the date element. Let me just see what it is. It doesn't like a caption maybe. Okay, so I'll set the date initially to null. That's just the constructor it takes. And underneath that I'll put a string element, and I'll bind that to the same thing. Dot bind. So that's going to be this, comma, value the date. And to prove these two guys at the top are working, I'm going to add another string element. And I'll bind that to something I need to add to the view model, and that's going to be value combined. So let's just add a combined to the view model. There's our first view model, here it is. And so what I'll do is I'll just add a public string combined. When you do this, it's a get return, and it's going to be hello plus hello 2. Maybe I'll put a space in between just to give it some nicer formatting. And obviously here I'll need to raise the property change when this happens, when these guys change. Right, so that is our view model updated, and our first view now has a complete set of sections within it. So I believe if I build this, let's see. Hopefully that builds. Right, so it builds. I set it as the startup project to save me doing it each time, and hit F5. And hopefully it'll go off and build. Moving previous, synchronizing assemblies, starting the app. Let's see what errors it comes across. Okay, so it's hit a exception, and that exception is in failed to load resources. Okay, so that is a problem with. Okay, so this is actually a straightforward enough problem. So if you look to the trace there, it's telling you that things aren't initialized within the droid resources. You can see that. And the reason for that is because if you do want to use Dialogs, then you have to use a different setup, or you have to copy some things from the setup. And the one you need to use is the MvvmCross setup, is it? Yeah. If you just change your base setup class to Dialog, then it will set up some additional resources for you. So now if I hit F5 to go, then come across, deploy succeeded. Right, so now you can see we've got hello, we've got MvvmCross. If we start typing in here to say, okay, I've got problems with my emulator, unfortunately. If I start using this, at least you'll see that we can change the date. I may need to restart the emulator to get the keyboard working, but you can see the date is data bound. If there's any way I can get that, so you can see this is data bound as well. Yeah, you can see that that is correctly working. Okay, so I didn't need to restart it. And you can see here, okay, next isn't working between these guys, so you'd have to implement that yourself. But hopefully you can see how that UI has been built up. If you need to override any of the default templates, that's easy to do using the final parameter in the elements. But that's a basic dialog implemented using so that's basic dialog implemented using the MonoDroid.Dialog and a first view there. So okay, let's quickly see if we can do the same thing in touch. And this again may require a little bit of following wind, but let's have a go. So we're going to add a new project, and this is going to be an iOS project for iPhone. Hello world, and it's called N_23_Dialog Dialog.touch. We create this. We're going to remove my view controller because we really don't want it. We're going to add a reference to the core. There it is. We're going to add the NuGet packages. So again, we're going to go to the local at the moment because I haven't uploaded these. And so that's the local one for this, for the whole of MvvmCross. And then also there is this hot tuner Touch.Dialog somewhere here. So let's just take a look here. Maybe I won't do it with the search. Let's take a look. Somewhere here it is, the hot tuner iOS dialog support. So we'll install that. And this isn't the same as MonoTouch.Dialog, it's a branch, it's a fork of MonoTouch.Dialog, just because we within MvvmCross we need tighter data binding, and so that's what we do here. So I'll just copy in the app delegate, and we should, without doing anything here, actually be able to run up. Let's just see if we can. So this view should work for hello. Okay, it hasn't got hello 2 or anything at the moment, but we should, for example, if we did a binding here, we'll leave that one as hello, that's the text field, and we'll do this one to combined. So without doing anything at the moment, we should get a partial implementation up. So if we set this as the startup project, and we choose iPhone Simulator, and we choose the Retina, and if I'm very lucky, if I hit Start New, And if I then go to tight the NC viewer, tight, and I'll need to connect, and I'll need the password. And when I connect in there, I may need another password. Oh, it's already loading on the other machine. Sorry about this. Just keeping up. Right, so it's already loading. So let's see whether or not we've hit a problem or if it's going to come through. Claims to have started, but let's just check our server logs. It's not actually managing to connect in. Let's just see if it's a problem with the simulator. Yeah, let's just see. So if I actually load up N23, doesn't seem to want to start at the moment. Don't see any trace problems at this second. That's a bit annoying. Let me try restarting that simulator because it just doesn't look very happy. Go here and quit the simulator. And let me also just check all of these properties that always upset it. So let's debug stop. Let's remove all these nasty characters from here. Okay, I'm alright with that. Let's just see whether we can get this running without dialog to start with. And version 1, so we're just setting up some default properties for it. Let's give it another go at starting. See whether we get anywhere with the simulator. So built. Having a go at running. Is the simulator going to spark into life? Oops, there goes the simulator. Let's see whether or not. Okay, so it's launched something. Okay, so now we have got this, and you know, it's not got very exciting data binding or anything at the moment, but it is basically working. So let's replace that with a dialog. And so to do that, what we need to do is, again, I think that for our setup, there's probably a dialog one we need to use, so I think it'll be a touch dialog setup we need to use. Yeah. Okay, and this one hasn't got the same parameters defined for it, so we'll just have to tweak those slightly. So let's do that. So we're going to add a presenter. This new MvvmCross touch view presenter. And again, you probably won't need to do this when it comes to the release, because I will fix that. And this is going to be a this, comma, and it's going to be a window, which is underscore window. And that then means I can pass in the presenter here instead. And so here I can pass this in as an MvvmCross touch view presenter. And that should be a presenter. Okay, so there's a little bit of fiddliness there that needs to be used, but I'll fix that up so you don't need that. And then in order to actually use the dialog, what we need to do is we're going to stop it inheriting an MvvmCross view controller, and instead it's going to inherit an MvvmCross.Dialog view controller. And then what we need to do is we need to set the root. So we'll get rid of that. That certainly isn't needed. And what we'll do is we'll set a root equals, and in fact we can pretty much copy this from the Droid example, so let's just do that. Let's just copy this entire root across. And the fact that we can just copy it is really the whole reasoning and thinking at the moment behind auto views. So we'll copy that across, and all it's saying is that the date element has a different time here. So okay, so here we're just going to pass in a date time as a default, and so what I'll do is I'll actually pass in the correct date time, which is view, no I won't, I'll just pass in date time Okay, so that now, if we run it, hopefully will build. And then if we head over to our simulator, let's see if I've made any mistakes. So that gives us a basic dialog view, and you can see it's got data binding. So if I add something here, you can see it data binds correctly. And you can see also that if I click on the date and I choose June, then you can see that it updates the date here, and I can do that. So let's prove it. We're going to go for the 26th of August 2026. When I go back, it's been updated here, as you can see. Hopefully you can see it's been updated. So that's perfectly fine, and all of this data binding here works correctly. And that is a very quick N+1 on 3.07 and the dialog support that's been re-implemented, as it were. I don't know if Next seems to work through here, so you can see how it does push through. Obviously the simulator is running quite slowly across this this connection at the moment, but that's just the debugger. It's interaction, but hopefully you can see how it works. There are still some fiddly bits with dialogs if you want to use things like the if you wanted to use things like the radio elements, but for normal elements like strings and like the date time, it should work fine. Just to show you a few others, if we added in here, I think there's a new date time element, is there? Is it a new time element? So let's just do that, and obviously that's not going to do too much at the moment. We'll just leave it as that. That should be okay. And we could also add, for example, if we go to our ViewModel, and let's just add a bool as well. PMVX bool, and I'll just call this option 1. Option 1. Then you should also be able to use bool elements, so let's just do that. So we should be able, for example, at the bottom here, to add a new boolean element, and we'll just put this as T or F, and we'll bind that to this comma, and so it's the value we're binding again. Almost everything with an element is a value, and this is being bound to option 1, I called it. It looks like there's a problem with the constructor here, so it needs an initial value. I'll set the initial value to false. The data binding will override that, and again I can just output that as a simple option here. So value, it was option 1, wasn't it, not options. Let's try that. So we should hopefully be able to do that. So hit F5 again, see what happens. I may have got it wrong on Boolean element, we'll soon find out. It's up and running, it says. Let's wait for the simulator to catch up. There's definitely something running slowly here, sorry about that. Up it runs, and now you can see we've got this true or false. It doesn't seem to have bound correctly on there, unfortunately. We may have to use a converter or something to get that working. But you can also see the time is now bound, and so if we change it to 10:02 PM and go back, then you can see that this has changed to, well, it's 9:02 PM because it's actually doing it in UTC there, I guess. We may need to tweak that. That may be a bug. I'd have to look at that again. It just looks like that's probably a UTC date, and that one's not at the moment. We'd have to look at what happens there. And you can see, April changes, but obviously you can't really set both of these independently as we're trying to here. Let me just check that true or false. Not sure why that's not binding in that string element there. It looks like it should be bound, so maybe there's another issue there. Let me see. If we try to use converter here, so let's just add one. Oops, not allowed to do that without just restarting. So let's add a converter. And so this is going to be truth converter. So let's add the truth converter to the core project, and I'll just do it directly here to start with. So just at the bottom here I'll add a truth converter, truth value converter, and that's going to be an MVX value converter, and that's going to take a bool as its input, and it's going to output a string. Oops, it's a public class. And then we want to override the convert for this, so let's do that. And so this is going to be term value question mark yay or nay. So if we've added that value converter, then obviously the conventions will just pick it up. But let's see if that builds for us and if that works. Let's see. Doing its best, it's thinking about starting. There it goes. So it's loading up, and yeah, it's still not showing the true or false here. What have I got wrong in my... So that's called option 1, that doesn't seem to be a problem. And here I've got value, it's bound to option 1, and its converter is truth. What's it telling us here? Okay, so it's saying that it doesn't know how to make a safe value. Null object cannot be converted to a value type. Okay, I'll have to look at that offline. I'm not sure entirely what that is, why that is not working. Certainly I should be able to do that. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm just gonna show you that you can bind these two. You know, if you had two switches at least, then this should work. I'm not sure why it's not happy, but let's give it a go. So if we do that and we have those two, option 1 looks like the right name. Yeah. So if I run that up, do I get anywhere? Or maybe there is a bug with the option 1. Let me find out. Let's get the dialog up and running. Just waiting for it to start. And then no, it just looks like those two aren't actually working at the moment. So there is something wrong with my thing. Let me just do the obvious thing, which is that maybe it's not actually, it's actually a build problem. If I rebuild the core and then I run up the touch, then let's see whether or not that's it. Maybe it just wasn't rebuilding. The good news is that portable class library support has been announced again, so hopefully within the next week or two we should see it for real coming from Xamarin. Obviously it might take a little while still to reach through. Okay, so now we do have two data bound controls, and so it was just a problem before with the core project not rebuilding. So that's, you know, a few more form elements you can see pushed through. Let me also transfer all of those things back again. So you can see we've got these here. We should now be able to take this same dialog and move it back to Droid and say, you know, again, this is why at some point auto views will definitely happen, because you can see, you know, this should really be portable code, this form definition. But hopefully if we run this up now in Droid, oops, I think I've just run up the touch one again, so let me stop that. If we run up the Droid project now, then we should see in the simulator, oops, no, it's not happy. What does that break? Okay, I didn't copy enough, so break a semicolon. No, it's still running. So if I now correct that cut and paste, a bit too hasty, then if I now run up Droid, then we should see a bit more data binding going on here. It's packaging away. Okay, so you can see now we've got these things, and these are data bound together. We've got this is still here, and it's still got this problem with my simulator. Sorry about this. And if we just come out and come back in, does it? Okay, it's just not happy, my simulator. But we've also got this date and time here, so we should be able to choose the time. Oops, I could do it correctly. Should be able to choose the time. You can see it's data bound. And I hope that's a really quick intro. I think it may, if you've not seen Dialog before, it may open up new questions for you. But if you have seen Dialog before, I hope that kind of shows you how quickly you can get it running. There are a lot of customization options in Dialog. Basically what's happening is when you include Dialog at the moment, you're including a whole load of resources, but you can override those resources for this guy. And so you can, an entry element doesn't have to look like this, it can look like anything you want it to. But to do that is a much more advanced lesson and a lot more advanced N+1. Today I just wanted to get you up and running. So hopefully that made some sense to you. If not, then let me know and I'll have to do more on Dialog. There are a few other guys who could do a lot more than me on Dialog and could talk about it at length, and maybe I'll get them to talk about it instead of me because they are much better at it. Okay, bye.